Okay. Good evening, all. Going to go over a few games in the next hour. One Kasparov game and 3 games, I think, from the World Cup. So this is the Kasparov game which caught my interest on the ChessBase website. Whoops. Let's go back to yeah. Okay. If I just get rid of this window, minimize it so there's no confusion there. So yeah, let's have a look at this game. So Kasparov actually played a match, friendly match, blitz match, against Lagrave, who's like I think the French champion, who's 2-7-1-5, but it was a blitz game. So let's have a look at that first, I think, to kick things off. So that's cool that he's still playing, even exhibition matches. It's still really good. So he played e4 against Lagrave. Sicilian defense, and after knight f3, d6. Actually, he didn't play d4 here, so d4 is the standard move. He played bishop b5 check, so maybe that avoids. It's not so theoretical, but it's not without venom. White can sort of try later, maybe to play c3 and d4. So knight c6, and after castles, bishop d7. Unpinning. So c3. So white's just trying to get control of the center. So d4. Just get the pawn in the center. So knight f6 is played, and now rook e1. So white's pieces are just aiming for d4 here. So this is the sort of thing from a c3 Sicilian that you'd expect. After a6, the bishop just goes back to f1. So it looks a bit sleepy what's going on here. Bishop on f1, rook on e1. But d4 and e5 remain like very useful for controlling the center. So bishop g4, and Grave is not afraid of giving up the light squared bishop. So Kasparov, the name actually, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I'm not really up on names that much. Does anyone know the name of this variation? I'm not 100% sure. Sorry about that. So bishop g4. So h3, asking bishop, what is it going to do? Is it going to give up itself? So usually by taking on f3, d4 and e5, the fight over those two key squares continues. Oh, it's the Moscow variation, is it? Mr. Key says it's the Moscow variation. Okay. So white's got the light square bishop, but black's got a little bit more pressure on the dark squares. g6 looks like a logical continuation. Put the bishop here and try and increase the dark square control. So d3, supporting e4, quiet, bishop g7. Now bishop e3, as though d4 might be played. Okay. Black plays knight d7, stopping d4. So we've got the bishop already working across d4. Okay. So knight d2. Now all of white's pieces seem okay. The bishops seem okay. The rooks are connected. Maybe there's rook d1. Maybe this knight can move, and then maybe d4. So it seems like a reasonable setup. Quiet, not too razor sharp. Black castles, and interestingly now the queen goes back to d1. So it's unblocking the pawn actually for f4. That's one idea, but maybe the queen is also useful coming here or here. That would be pinning that pawn. So, but I think f4 is the main point, as evidenced by the rest of the game. So rook c8 was played, and now f4. So what's going on here? f4. White's got the two bishops, but you know, if f5, you know, e5 is going to be a problem. Actually, black invites, though, strangely. It looks a bit odd to me, but you know, black is a 27-1-5, so why would black play this? Black plays e5, seemingly allowing the very good-looking move at f5. I'd say it's good-looking because, you know, you're kind of stopping at f5 from black. You know, potentially, you know, maybe you've got this kind of plan to really trap that bishop. You know, if it takes, you get e4. Mind you, there's always d5, so I don't know, maybe it's not that bad. Black actually takes and plays d5 immediately. Okay, so he's got control of that e4 square. But is the king side a bit vulnerable? These two pawns, or maybe this idea, just to try and target this bishop. In fact, this is used now, g4. Okay, and this bishop can also come back to g2 now. Well, it'll be on the diagonal. Okay. Okay, so what's going on now after g4? e4, pawn sack time, gets e5 square. If it takes it doesn't, or d4 and then get the e5 square. So Kasparov plays bishop f4 actually. The time control of the game. That's another good question. I think it's like a 30-minute game. I'm not 100% sure what the exact time control is. It's a rapid exhibition game. Does anyone know for sure? It's just on ChessBase at the moment. It's the second news item at the moment. Anyone on live stream know the time control? Hi Majnu, by the way. Hi Einid and Davy Gravy. Does anyone know the time control of this game? Oh, Chess Explained. Oh, hi there. Do you know the time control of this game? I thought it was just 30 minutes. Say it's blitz. It's not 5 minute though, is it? Okay. So anyway, black plays knight d e5. So what is this doing? There's a threat now of e takes d or knight d3. So Kasparov has to do something about that. So he plays actually d takes e. So he's a pawn up, and black just uses it as a sort of pawn sack d4. So he's got a very nice looking position actually with this e5 control, but he has sacked a pawn here. Yeah, and this pawn is kind of dangerous in the center, but Kasparov has got g5 now, trying to sort of, you know, make this bishop really bad with f6. Right, so rook e8, and also the queen now goes back to the on the attack, queen h5. So it looks nice for white because of this f6. The centre at the moment, this bishop's covering d2 at the moment, but black takes anyway and plays knight d3. So he's hitting that bishop. Okay. So Kasparov gives up the light square bishop and now plays f6. So this is kind of a nice pawn chain, but has white got the pieces to sort of do something with the queen maybe? I don't know what's really going on here. If white looks visually okay, but now offers the the exchange of queens, queen f3, and it's not taken. It's given as white as an option though, c4 to take the queens. So queen takes d3 was played, and now e5. So basically, well, the d-file is now suppressed by black's own pawn, but this bishop can come out to c5. This pawn seems okay. This king can maybe come out like this. These pawns look a bit dangerous. Maybe like this sort of stuff is all dangerous potentially if these pawns can get going. So knight d8 looks like a nice blockade though to go here. Nice blockade, hitting c3. c3 is protected actually, knight e4, so it's protecting c3. And also there could be a frontal attack soon on that pawn, of course. Knight e6, hitting the bishop. Bishop moves. Rook ed8. So the pawn is looking good, but pressure's put on it anyway. Rook ad1. But this pawn is a bit disconnected from white. Rook d5. So what's happening with this pawn? But remember, the rook is also defending this pawn. So bishop d4 actually is a pawn sack here. So what's happened here after bishop d4? If black doesn't take on d4, then rook takes d3. Okay, so black does take on d4 and takes on d4 again. So again, what is the situation now? Black is a pawn up, but the knight looks like a very nice piece compared to the bishop. This pawn looks vulnerable. Actually, king f2, and now the king's actually threatening king e3 and just to gobble this pawn. Okay, so rook e8. e5 under fire, it's protected. Knight g3 protecting e5. Rook d5. Okay, h4. So preparing for rook e5 hitting g5, and he just wants to get this pawn in return once that happens. So bishop b4, and now rook e4. Bishop c3, as though black's simply going to take and still protect d3. But now knight f5. Okay, so knight f5 brings in the idea of knight e7 check, which would be a fork. So the king moves. Knight e7 attacking the rook. The rook moves again. Now king f3. So it looks as though these pawns are kind of dangerous. But white's still a pawn down for the moment. No, white's not a pawn down. It's actually equal on pawns. Rook ed8, and now exchange of rooks. Knight goes back, it hits the rook. Knight e3 hitting the rook again, and again, and again. And is it going to be a draw? No. Kasparov changes to rook c1. Okay, so this is kind of menacing, this threat. The knight is covering d1 for the pawn. So bishop a5. Check. Okay, this is looking a bit critical now for black, with these pawns being kind of mobile. So h5. Wow. So now is e6 and g6 as major threats. Okay. So king e8. e6, first breakthrough to get these like free against one if this is knocked out. d2, offering the bishop to e7. Okay, so that bishop pinned. Black queens taken, but now not the immediate rook e8, but these pawns are still very dangerous. These pawns here. Okay, so basically Kasparov is not in a rush to play rook takes d8. He plays actually h6, so this pawn's a bit of a menace. So there might be g6 coming up, to overload black. Rook d6. Black's not really threatening anything at the moment. King actually just went back to g2, amazingly. Check. And now king e2, just checking the waters. Black's not in a position to do much, it seems. Now after b5, Kasparov strikes with g6. And this is looking quite decisive. F takes g, takes check. Now lovely f7 at the end, little trick. So if king takes, there's rook takes, and if king moves, then rook takes, and then f8. So we'll just have a look at that. Say king there. Right, so he's queened. So he resigned after f7. So it was just a rapid game of some interest. Let's have a look at that in overview and summary. So White's basic plan was to sort of get a simple, centre with c3 and d4 positional treatment. Bishop comes back very soon after rook e1. He's just vacated f1 for the bishop to come back. No problems. So he collects the light square bishop. He slowly builds up again by playing for f4. Black goes a bit crazy here, it seems. I don't know, f5, inviting f5 looks a bit risky for this plan. If White can get in g4, g5 and f6, it looks nice for White. But it's counterplay for Black with e4, temporary pawn sack. Okay, so bishop f4. 95. Now he takes. So Black sacked a pawn, but has a lot of pressure. Okay, still a pawn down, but a lot of pressure. Gets the light square bishop, but now is soon to get his pawn back. There's so much pressure now. Well, this pawn is protected. Now. These pawns are a bit vulnerable to rook d5s and stuff. Okay, so White sacks pawn back, so it's going to be equal on pawns again. Equal on pawns again. But White looks to have a dangerous position. Protects the e5. And makes an inroad now with this knight f5, 97. For the c file very soon. After this repetition, there's a rook c1. So it seems a neat game actually, quite convincing. That these pawns are really just gonna sort of win the game for Kasparov. So e6 with that menacing threat of e7. So if takes, there was g6 with very powerful passed pawns. So d2 is played, and we just reach this position where Black can't really do much. So there's a few kind of moves asking what Black's doing. He's not doing much here. So Kasparov's just able to now play g6. Really crushing move. If rook takes f6, actually, g7 looks to be... Sorry, no, g7, there's rook g6. No, there isn't rook g6 because rook d8. It's all pretty tied down. Or sorry, e takes d8. It's all pretty crushing. So this wins as well. This is very easy. f7 check. Okay, so that was sort of quite interesting. Let's have a look at some World Cup games. I've got some World Cup games to have a look at, so let's go on to those. So that was that Kasparov game. So Svidler doing well again in the Gronfeld. Okay, so Svidler's through in the World Cup along with Ivanchuk and Grishchuk, I believe. So let's take the Black side. So onto the World Cup. Okay. So let's give a bit more of that board actually for the live stream. Right, so d4, knight f6. We get a Gronfeld defense. White takes on d5. This is all Gronfeld's main line so far. But now, slightly unusual move. Check, disruptive check. Or is it? So the check aims to just be annoying on this diagonal. So provoking something for queen a3. So bishop d7, queen a3. I suppose from a3, you know, and say bishop g5 on e7 here. Okay. Knight c6 is played. Knight f3 and now e5. It looks like a pleasant position for black intuitively. He takes on d4. And that offers the exchange of queens with queen e7. Just asking that queen what to do. And also, you know, black can consider casting queenside. Yeah, so it looks like an okay position for black. White took on e7. Knight takes. So if black castles queenside like he does now, it looks as though most of his problems are solved. But what about f7? What about this? Maybe there's like bishop e8, you might think. But bishop c4, and you know there's a problem here with f7. But this is quite interesting. Black kind of goes for the center control. He plays f5. And he's about to offer an exchange sacrifice, allowing this winning of the exchange. So knight g5, he simply just takes on e4. So he's won just one centre pawn. But the other centre pawn now is under fire. d4 is also under fire. Okay, so an interesting exchange sacrifice for a pawn, and soon to be maybe another pawn. So white's castles here. He can take the exchange the next move. So two pawns now for the moment for the exchange. But there's a trick. Bishop d5, forking, b7, e4. So it's one pawn for the exchange. Just one. But look at the pawn situation. There's three pawns over here, and there's only one pawn here. Black has the two bishops. This is the sort of position, you know, how would you guys, you know, evaluate this position? Are black's pawns kind of significant here? Significant enough. He's exchanged down, but he has to start using pawns. So b5, and now c5. So this bishop's also very nice in the centre. Okay, and he starts just advancing these pawns. Lovely, 3-1 over here. So, and now just b4, he gets his pawns going and his king going, and it's just looking quite dangerous now, these pawns. So bishop f5, the bishops are working well, guiding, you know, for this kind of advance. So b3 looks good. The exchange down, but white's under loads of pressure here. White takes on b3. Loads of pressure. Compensation for being exchanged down. Bishop d7. Okay. So b2 is going to create an insurmountable force here. This bishop's on it, the rook's on it. So b2, very solid. Okay. So white's trying to get that pawn. Black doesn't mind exchange of one pair of rooks. Bishop b5. So as if bishop d3 is now threat, you know, to come in to play b1, try and decoy that rook away. Bishop a2 protecting b1. The king can move over now. Starts to move over. Check. Bishop e4. So threat b1. Now the king comes in again. And it looks kind of easy for the pawns now to come down. c4. c3. Because if it takes c2 and one of these pawns is queening, it's critical all of a sudden. Check. And here white actually resigned. This is a major threat. It's very difficult to do anything about. So that's Gronfeld's game involving an exchange sack. Let's have a quick overview and summary of this game. Okay, so Gronfeld where black sacked the exchange, didn't mind the exchange of queens with queen e7, and casting queenside, okay, protects b7. So this f5, I don't know about other alternatives here. They look a bit passive. If like bishop e8 or bishop e6, it looks bad, you know. Say takes, like g5, doesn't solve a problem. Bishop e8 looks passive. So this looks aggressive, f5, just offering exchange sack. f5, interesting. It's in the spirit of the Gronfeld to try and knock out, you know, white's centre. Hyper-modern concept. Knock out the centre. So one pawn gone. Knock out the other centre pawn. Okay. But he's losing one of the pawns back to this fork. But one pawn for the exchange is enough. Just starts marching the pawns. Okay, so that's very interesting. The dynamism working well for black. The exchange down, but crushing position. He's able to just increase the pressure here of these pawns. Okay. I don't know how many of you play the Gronfeld, but right, let's have a look at another Zvidler game. So again, black, okay, against Ivanchuk, but this time in the Sicilian defense. So a Sicilian game here. E4, c5. So mainline Sicilians actually played d4, a6. Exciting. Quick b5. So quick b5 for bishop b7. Striking at e4, you know, b4. Put pressure on the e4 pawn. So white plays bishop d3. Now queen b6. Okay. So he's really threatening to take the knight here. So the knight moves. Now knight c6. And white castles kingside. Okay. So has black got a bit of pressure here? Queen b8. Interesting move. So he's not yet developing his kingside pawns. This bishop can be used to create a sort of battery with a queen, which he does. Bishop d6, holding up e5. Or does it? In fact, white plays e5 anyway. Okay, so what's going on here? There's probably trouble ahead if knight takes e5. Might just be an intuitive decision here, because you know the king's in the center. It would be like trouble, possibly. I'm not 100% sure here what the compensation is. Does anyone know, out of interest, if black took? He played actually bishop c7, but if black takes here, can anyone see anything good for white? Not really sure. Okay, so black plays anyway, bishop c7, so he's keeping the pressure on e5. After bishop f4, knight g7, he's just carrying on with development. Hits the bishop on f4. Oh, dead in the end, writes bishop e4. Ah. Okay, so bishop e4, was that really the idea? Okay. And Chess Explained writes e5 was a novelty. Ah. Okay. So, the bishop retreats back here. Bishop b7. So black's position looks fairly solid here. Nothing really to attack. This knight, okay, it hasn't got too many squares. E5 is really under fire. Yeah. Chess explained why it's guess not taking a practical decision to avoid problems. Yeah. So the other rook joins in the centre, rook AD1, and now black just plays knight here. So maybe knight D5's that coming next, and then maybe knight F4. This will be tasty. Both knights, that sort of thing, for example. So bishop E4 challenging the bishop on B7, takes, and now castles. Okay, which offers actually D7. D7 is hanging here, which is taken, and now knight D5 shuts the door on the rook, and there's no C4 taking. So this rook kind of looks interesting. What else is black threatening? Really, you could try and threaten to munch the rook, or we can play knight F4. So knight D6 is played, and the rook is attacked like this. Knight B6, winning the exchange. But white makes it into a kind of peace sacrifice. Strangely, so rook takes F7. He's made it into a peace sack. I'm not sure the compensation is really there. Nitroglycerin writes bishop 12, bishop F4. Okay. So this is accepted, this piece sack. So black's a piece up. 3 bits, 2 bits. Queen and rook. How many pawns? 5 pawns against 7. 2 pawns for the piece. Check. King G8. Okay. 3 pawns for the piece. Okay, 3 whole pawns. Queen C8. Attacking, defending. But maybe in this position, this is starting to be dangerous. This sort of stuff could be dangerous. Actually, rook A7 now kind of defends, and maybe F7 is going to be good as well for the rook later. Okay, Toshin writes for black. The knight on B6 is always bad. Tartakova. I didn't know that. Okay, so rook D1. The main point here was time, Chess explained, right? But white does seem to be okay. He's got lots of pawns. Knight A4, trying to nab a pawn back, which is seemingly allowed. So it's only 2 pawns for a piece. Zavida was on 20 minutes or so here. Okay, so he's got white's got 2 pawns only for the piece. Now rook D5, so there's a big threat here of rook C5, I guess, for this bishop. Bishop goes to B6. Okay, so rook D6, and now knight C4 protecting and attacking. Queen moves. Now rook F7 hitting the queen. Queen moves again. And actually, knight takes D6, winning even more material. So actually, why didn't the rook move here? After knight D6, why didn't this rook move? If the rook had moved, maybe rook E7, I don't know. The rook didn't move, in fact. So it's all a bit strange actually here. White's just going further down in material, and here he resigned. So possibly time pressure for both sides. H3 was the losing move, Chess explaining rights. He's at FIDE 2400, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that before. Just explain, he's kibitzing on live stream. So H3 was the losing move. If we go back, rook D1, knight 4, H3. Well, it does lose a pawn, yeah. Strange. So rook d5, bishop b6. Bishop b6 introduces queen c2 maybe as well. Also rook e7, just to sort of challenge that knight, is probably safer. So rook d6, knight c4. I don't know. Just white's going material down here. So I wonder in this position actually, if black played knight takes d6, is this a problem? What would white play here? It looks bad as well. It still looks winning for black, doesn't it? Interesting. Okay, let's do an overview and summary. It's probably too complex, this game actually. It's Sicilian defense. So a quick b5. Pressure on the center. Queen b8, interesting. So it creates an interesting battery. e5. Okay, so someone mentioned actually if knight takes maybe bishop e4. Actually, bishop e4, and I don't know. There's pressure. I don't know. Needs engine analysis. So the bishop just retreated. Bishop f4. So the knight comes to attack f4 bishop. White looks pretty in the center, but black's solid. And now after bishop e4, this pawn is in theory stopping black from castling. Pardon me, but black castles anyway. He takes on e4 and now he just castles, allowing d7 to drop. So knight d5. Okay. So there's a threat maybe of queen c8, just to win the exchange. So knight d6 and then winning the exchange anyway now with knight b6. I don't know, really complex. So this is a piece sack for 3 pawns. It didn't seem to work out very well. There wasn't quite enough for the piece, it seems. And now losing the exchange as well very soon. So basically white is a whole rook down now. Whole rook down. Resigns here. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, everyone. I apologise if my commentary, it sounds as though I've got a cold. It's because I've got a cold really coming up. Pardon me. So okay, there is another game we could go over just briefly if you would like. I've got another game here which is Ivanchuk manages to go through as well, and the decisive game Ivanchuk had was this one. So against Ponomariov. So he was black and managed to beat Ponomariov with black. So let's have a look at that briefly. So Ivanchuk plays the Nimzo engine, or tries to, but now knight f3. So we're in a kind of Queen's Gambit decline now, and now Queen's Gambit accepted, transposition. So after e4, bishop b4, I think this was named the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit accepted. Bishop g5, a black strikes at the centre quickly with c5. Okay, white takes on c4. C takes d4. Knight takes d4. And black voluntarily gives up the dark square bishop. So there's structural damage, of course. But is the bishop pair kind of dangerous? Well, it's tricky. Queen a5 hits these two guys. So if bishop takes f6, I think queen c3 is on check. That'd be nasty. So gets a bit technical. White plays bishop b5 check, and now he takes on f6 anyway, allowing queen takes c3 check. This might all be theory actually. Interestingly, knight takes e6 now. So if f takes, maybe rook c1 and then rook takes d7, sorry, c8 to take on d7. Possibly that's the idea, something like rook c1. That must be the idea, surely. So Ivanchuk calmly just played queen e5 here. So he manages to castle actually. He's also defending against knight c7, the queen. Whoops. So the knight goes back. So a pawn, materially actually, sorry, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, equal on pawns, shattered pawns, king not able to be castled though. Black is able to castle. Queen d3, and now knight c5 hitting queen in there, inviting a queen exchange with a check, which is played. But black doesn't have to take the queen, he can play this and straighten out his pawns now. You know, if white wants to take, he's going to straighten out these pawns, which he does do, perhaps surprisingly. And yeah, it looks a bit of a grind actually now. Kicks the bishop back, wins e4, doesn't mind losing e5. So 4 pawns each. How does Ivanchuk outplay his opponent from here? Kicks the knight, gets the bishop out. The rooks here are not as connected as these two rooks, so these two rooks are free to come into the game at the moment. And also we've got a 2-to-1 pawn majority here to make use of, so that's another asset. So that pawn's moved, now knight c3. Okay, and also a2 might be a bit vulnerable here actually. Nigel Christian asks, what happens after 14 knight g7 check and knight f5? I think the check was harmless actually. I think the king would just move, and maybe that he thought it was harmless perhaps. Let's carry on there. Maybe we can go over that in a quick review and summary of this game. So knight d4 hitting the bishop, check, a5, so he's using that 2-to-1 pawn majority, again using it. Bishop c4, a2 is now quite vulnerable, it's moved, the rook comes in on the d file, rook d2, it looks very active for black, he's won a pawn. Now knight a2, very nice. Black's rook's very active. In fact, I thought there was a threat here of rook takes f3 and takes. Rook e7, and apparently, I don't know. If anyone's still awake on live stream, was rook takes f3? Oh no, was that on the cards because of rook c6? I'm not sure. But it seems Ivanchuk decided to play knight c3. Okay, so knight c3. Instead of rook takes f3, strange. Okay, so knight b4 moves away from danger, f5. Maybe both players in time trouble or something. So rook g8, coordinating both rooks nicely on g2. And now bishop e2, trying to get into that g2. Oh, there was knight a7, was there? Nitroglycerine, sorry. Okay, after the rook takes f3, knight a7. Yeah, that sounds as though that would refute that. Okay. Okay, cool. So now, but Ivanchuk is able to forcefully win the exchange now after taking on f3. Taking here, he's winning the exchange by force with this check. And here, white resigned. So I think black had a great position anyway. white resigned here. So okay, let's do a quick overview and summary of this game. So this is another key decisive game in the World Cup, where Ivanchuk managed to use a kind of variation in the Queen's Gambit accepted, where he voluntarily gives up that dark square bishop, but he stops white from casting, really, the way this game pans out. And the problem is the disconnected rooks. Maybe that's one of the problems intuitively, you might think. So knight takes e6 was answered by queen e5. Sharp stuff. So the question here was knight g7 check. Sorry, knight g7 and knight f5. Okay, the bishop's hanging. You know, queen takes b5 check. So here, so that's not so good. If you take here, then maybe just take. Mind you, check here would seem to be quite dangerous. Queen g5, keeping both rooks on c8. So maybe that's why. Could be about equal there. Or maybe black's better. Possibly black might be okay. So so after this knight e6, queen e5, knight d4 was played, and black was okay anyway. It seems quite an active position, and he just outplayed his opponent. Ponomariov was just outplayed. There's a few assets black has fundamentally. 2-1 pawn majority on the queen side, more active rooks. The rook on the 7th is very active, and he forcibly starts winning material. Knight a2 sorts out that technical issue with the knight quite neatly, and so we're saying in this position rook takes f3. There might be knight a7. Yeah, this hits the rook. Yes, that's a good point. So maybe that's why that's not played. Chess Explained writes a mysterious game. Knight takes e6 is well known to be bad for white. Right. Okay. So this looks like a really active position for black. He doesn't need rook f3. He just plays knight c3. And he just starts the gang up now on, you know, g2 very soon. Starts ganging up on g2. So bishop e2, removing white's defences and winning the exchange. And white just resigned here. Okay. Yeah, I hope you got something out of these games. I'll put this on YouTube. Maybe you can ask questions there later, etc. So YouTube.com Kingscrusher. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also Chess Explained. Chess Explained is also got a YouTube channel. Who's a 2400 player? If you want to check his channel out as well. Thanks for popping by, and so I hope you got something out of this week. Thanks very much. Okay, I'll be here for a minute or two for any questions. Thanks.